All right, part 2. My apologies for being choppy on the last episode, cutting off there. So here we go. Continuing with a template, some suggested ideas on practicing. Now, I did mention it before vocally, and I should and I will mention it now, that although I have various ways of practicing, different strategies and plans, depending on what's going on in my life or what goal that I'm trying to reach, this particular template of the 4 stages within an hour or 20 minutes, 5 minutes each, you 4 stages, breaking it down within that 4 things working on, doesn't have to be the only way. This is just giving you a template so you can manipulate it, come up with your own. But this particular strategy I gleaned from an article by Bart Elliott on the Drummer Cafe. So you can Google or Bing or Yahoo, Bart Elliott, Drummer Cafe, how to practice, and it should come up. It's a 2-page article, I believe, or 2-part article. So anyways, we left off on placing the single strokes within the rhythm that we were saying, that for sake of example, that we were practicing. And we did every other one. And right on the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. And now we're going to do it slower when we come in on the singles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, so you can practice it slower, you can practice it 8th notes and 16th notes. Okay, so quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the next one you can do 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you can do 16th notes. Okay, so you can practice and you can use a variety of either or. And then you can decide what we were doing the 1, and then when we left off, we were saying, well, you don't have to come in right on 1. So let's start this metronome.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. You don't have to. It could be on the second beat. Rhythm. Rhythm. Here come the singles. 1. Notice I didn't come in on the 1. Let's see you coming on the second beat. 4, beep, da 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 da. Okay, so you could come in on the end of 1. 1 and 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Practicing that intentionally. Okay, you can count out loud while you're doing it. All of these things are going to develop your internal metronome, giving you the ability to manipulate time and rhythm, or at least to navigate within time. This is very important for you to be a solo musician, but also for you to carry a band or to be able to communicate with a drummer or the other musicians more effectively. You have the ability to do more the more you understand that time. You'll see a whole new world will open up to you. Okay, so if you really practice this, focus on it. And if you haven't done it before, I believe you'll be surprised at what you can do with this ability. Okay, so these are the 4 things that we're talking about: timing, technique, increasing your vocabulary, and developing your ears. Tuning, getting better at tuning your instrument. Okay, working on those and intentionally incorporating them within your practice. Say you don't have the time a whole hour. It might be 10 minutes, might be 15 minutes. 15 minutes, well, let's say it's 20 minutes. Say all you have is 20 minutes. Well, you can do 4, turn this click off. You do 4 minutes. 4 sections of 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You can do it that way. Say you only have 10 minutes. You only want to work on one thing. I would highly recommend that. Or you're 10 minutes, but you know you got to work on 2 things. 5 minutes and 5 minutes. 5 minutes doesn't seem like a lot. In the grand scheme of things, it's not. But when you're consistent over a length of time, and even within that 5 minutes, when you're just focusing on that at a steady pace, working on your consistency of the and fluency of the rhythm or the exercise, it is a lot. It can actually allow you to gain and get goals. Okay? So having this strategy is great. Now, in the previous episode where I was talking about the 4, and then we went in the fourth thing where we were working on a rhythm, or incorporating the singles with the rhythm, you don't have to practice it with the metronome. Perhaps you want to practice it to a song. It doesn't have to be to the metronome. Every now and then you might want to shake things up. Find a song. Here's the thing. If you're going to practice with the song, that will make things less redundant constantly. For me, this is like meditation. I don't mind practicing to a metronome. But sometimes I like to practice to a song too. I'll turn on a song and then I'll practice with that as the metronome. The issue with that, however, is if that particular band did not record to a click and they move around a lot within their tempo, then you might be practicing varying your tempo. If that band has a tendency to slow things down, you're going to start picking this up and having a tendency to slow things down. And you may not even know it until later. Some of these things, I mean, I still have to practice. They can be a hard reality to accept. But when you say, oh, you know what, I do tend to drag, or I do tend to speed up. A lot of us have a tendency to lean towards one side or the other, or to do a combination of them. But if you're I'm saying all that to say, if you're gonna practice to music, then make sure that the band that you're practicing, the song that you're practicing with, has a consistent, strong sense of time. And you can test that somewhat by starting a metronome right on when they play. Okay, and also if you're constantly practicing to a metronome, your ears after a while are going to start developing, and you're going to start picking up on that. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with if the band didn't record to a click. I love doing that and prefer doing that, even though I do record to a metronome and a click and whatnot. But when you're practicing this one thing, then you want to have that prepared. Okay, also, if you're playing in a church, or you're playing on a large tour or a stage or whatnot, you may have in-ears in, and there may be a metronome set between the bands. So you need to be able to have that skill. Going in the studio, you need to have that ability, okay? You'll find that it really will help you to navigate around on the drums a lot better. So that's my takeaway for practice. Also, there is practicing if you don't have this type of time. You can, let's say you have children and you have a pickup line and you wait for your kids, you can bring something to use as a practice pad. Okay? Sit it in the car. Practice easy. Even a piece of wood or a book, you could still practice tone exercises, because it is about the articulation in the way that you move your hands and your arms, the amount of pressure on that particular practice pad or whatever it is. It might be a notebook. It might be a book in your lap and just working. It might be your right or left leg and working, let's say, on a heel tip while you're in the car. Pay attention to the road though. So you might want to use a book in case you might not want to have something heavy like this flying around in the car in case. These are all ideas that you can use even if you don't have that much time. There's always time to practice. If you say, well, I'm always traveling, I'm in the car, well, then you can do that. Maybe listening. It might be, if you're working on your ability to internalize clave, it might be listening to a song that has a clave in it and listening over and over and over and paying attention to the other instruments and where they're at and with it. If you don't pick it up at one point, if you're new to it, you're not going to. So you just have to keep listening and listening and listening and listening and listening, taking a lesson, trying to figure out where things are at. But listening is also a form of practice, okay? But eventually you need to have something physically that you're doing and you're working on your practice. So like I said, it could be your leg, it could be turning the radio off and turning the metronome on in the car and just playing that. It could be getting now, and I don't know if you're watching this way off in the future, this may be an old thing, but for here in March of 2018, now you have YouTube Red, where you can listen, you can subscribe to YouTube and get the subscription where all the videos, you can listen to the audio. So you can get a YouTube of someone teaching something, and you can at least still listen to what he's saying and talking about, right? And where he's explaining certain things. That's a form of practice, learning and memorizing, okay? So, but you need to have a strategy. Just going and say, yeah, I'm working some things out, I'm shedding or whatever, and then just, you got a whole hour and you just constantly practice things you already know, well, you don't want to just work on things you already know. You want to develop and increase your vocabulary. Okay? So these are just some ideas and suggestions and things on how to practice. I find that a lot of people that are starting out just don't really understand what practice really is. And a lot of well-seasoned musicians take that for granted, that everybody else, they just take it for granted and assume everyone else knows what practice means. Well, the person may not know, especially if they've had no other exposure, have not had any exposure to learning formally. Now, these concepts may seem simple, but like I said, practicing one thing, focusing on it every day, or at least a few times a week for a consistent amount of time, not doing anything else but that one thing, is not as easy as it sounds. And the idea is not knowing that, oh, I know about that, doesn't sound complicated or complex, polyrhythms and this and that. It's not in the knowing, it's in the doing. This knowing is in the actual practice of doing it. And the fruit is of your action, how you're able to play it is going to be the fruit and the telltale sign of whether or not you really know it, whether or not you're really doing it. So just a couple ideas to incorporate in your practice. Hopefully this helps somebody, and I'll see you next time.